Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Shred Lab here in Tofino. I'm Reece, and today I'm going to be shaping an 80-liter wingfoil board.
We're going to be shaping an EPS foam core on my homemade CNC machine, building up all of the foil box reinforcements, doing a full carbon fiber vacuum bag layup, and finishing off the board with a super lightweight micro balloon epoxy hot coat. So let's throw the foam on the machine, and here you can see the foil box supports being cut out before getting into the actual shaping of the board. And because this board is so thick, at about 6 inches at the thickest point, I'm actually shaping it in 2 halves because my machine doesn't actually have the depth in its Z-axis to cut a board that is 6 inches thick. And here we are shaping the top half of the board first. And I'm actually shaping the top half of the board in 2 parts on top of that. Now on to the second half of the top. And to align the blank on the machine, I'm using these dowel pins. And there's the top half of the board finished, and now just rinse and repeat with the bottom. To glue the 2 halves together, I'm using Gorilla Glue, and once again, those alignment pins, which I have matching sets of holes in the top and the bottom, and everything sits perfectly flush before chucking it into a vacuum bag at super low pressure just to get some clamping force on that blank. This is high density PVC foam, otherwise known as Divinicel, and I'm using this to whip up a blank for the foil box. Once again using Gorilla Glue. I needed my blank to be about 1.5 inches thick, and I only had 1/2 inch thick material. Carving out the pockets for the foil tracks. I'm using the Futures 10.5 inch strong boxes, and I drop them in with a mixture of epoxy and Profil. just cleaning up the blank where all of the inserts are going to go in to support the foil box. I like to do 3 standoffs that connect the foil box to the deck. So when you're pumping around on the foil board, you have a direct connection between the foil box and the carbon fiber layers on the deck, which really helps to prevent the foil box from crunching the foam, the soft EPS, under your feet and ruining your board. So I'm dropping in these standoffs, once again with Gorilla Glue, and leaving a little bit of excess sticking out the top to clamp with later on. Once again, Gorilla Glue to drop the foil box in. It's kind of like the foil board builder's wet dream, because it doesn't heat up and melt the foam, and it expands to fill any little grooves. And now I'm using those standoffs to clamp that foil box down, so I have a really solid connection between deck and the foil box. Tuning up the blank by hand, getting rid of all the ridges that the machine leaves behind. If I wanted to, I could make the machine cut the board perfectly smooth, but that will just take a lot of time, and it's actually much faster for me to leave little ridges and clean them up by hand afterwards. Next up, we're going to lay up the bottom of the board and chuck it into the vacuum bag. This is where my camera work got a little bit shoddy and I kept forgetting to charge my camera, but the gist of it is I'm laying up the board with 5.7 ounce twill weave carbon fiber and topping that off with peel ply and then a breather cloth before putting it in my vacuum bag. And here I run out of battery and don't actually get any footage of laying up the bottom of the board. But here it is the next morning in the vacuum bag, and you can see around the foil box where a lot of excess resin has been sucked out of the board, which is exactly what you want doing the vacuum bag. What's nice about doing the vacuum bag is that this shape would be incredibly difficult to lay up by hand with all the curves and ridges that are on the board. And using the vacuum bag, you can kind of just slop resin on. You don't have to worry too hard about getting a super lightweight layup, and you can just chuck it in the vacuum bag, get the carbon fiber to sit perfectly on all those curves, and all of the excess resin gets sucked out as well. I like to give the board a nice once over before getting set up to glass the deck of the board, just removing any little ridges and lumps that might have been along the lap line. I made sure my camera was fully charged up, and now you can get more of a proper idea of what was going on the bottom when I was laying it up. Once again using 5.7 ounce twill weave carbon fiber.
You leave the compressor.
Here we are the next morning, routing out holes for the leash plug and the vent plug. I like to do these little extra components after the vacuum bag. I find it just makes running the squeegee over the board much simpler when there are no inserts in the board, and it's not a big deal to just add these in. Now I'm adding some 4-ounce fiberglass patches over the areas where your heels can impact on the rails, and it just really helps in preventing any cracking in that area. I normally would add that in during the vacuum bag, but this board is for my dad and we were trying to go ultimate lightweight. In the end, I decided to add them on anyways afterwards. Now you can see me just sanding down to that tape line I put on earlier in the video. And I actually built that tape line up 3 layers thick so that I could see it through the carbon after the vacuum bag. So unfortunately, my camera battery was dead again when I got around to filming the hot coats. But basically, what I did is I caked the entire board in a mixture of epoxy and micro balloons. I did a 3-to-1 mixing ratio of 3 parts micro balloons to 1 part epoxy. And this way I was able to get away with using only about 150 milliliters of resin to cover the entire board, which is super lightweight. And I'm actually going to be sanding most of the filler off of the board now, so it will get even lighter. The nice thing about the filler is that it's very easy to sand as well, so I'm saving hours of work by using this technique and going through a very cool sand through look. So we're sanding through the filler layer until we can see carbon showing, but not sanding through the carbon. Another benefit of using the white filler Pro-Fill is that it actually helps keep the temperature of the board down if you're leaving it in the sun as well. Carbon, obviously, if you're in a warm place in the sun, if you leave it outside, it's going to heat up and potentially cause some delamination issues on you. And the final step, we're going to seal the board with the secret sauce. So here's my dad weighing in his new 80-liter board, and just as a reference, the industry standard for like a high performance wingfoil board is about 13 pounds for an 80-liter.
About 4 kilos.
The finish is really cool actually because you kind of get away with murder.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. But you can't feel any of it, so.
Well, it's dead
That's what I mean.
smooth. Yeah.
It kind of adds to the look. Authentic.
Well, my dad took away that 80-liter version for himself before I got a chance to try it, but here's my second session on my personal 60-liter version that I made for myself. I never intended for this to be a pure surf foiling board. It was designed as more of a wing board, but it turns out it's an epic surf foil board as well because of the shape. It is so easy to pump around. It's designed to have the same volume in front of the foil box as it does behind the foil box. So my 60-liter version has 30 liters in front of the foil box and 30 liters behind the foil box. And so the foil is not having to compensate to lift the weight of the boards because it's perfectly balanced, and it just makes it insanely easy to use. It takes all the pressure off of your back leg when you're pumping around and when you're turning. And I think that this board just immediately took my foiling to the next level, which is pretty cool for a new piece of equipment. This 60 liter is 5 foot 9 inches long, so you get that benefit of having a extended waterline and increased board speed when you're trying to get up on foil, so it gets up really easily. But then as soon as you're up, you're not having that length get in the way of weighing down the foil because it's now behind you. You don't even notice it. It's actually helping you counterbalance the foil and whip into turns and pump around super easily. It's a super cool board to ride. If you want to get your hands on one of these, I will make one for you. I will leave some contact info in the video description, so just shoot me a message and we can chat. Thanks for watching, and I'll try and get some footage of some wingboarding action on this board soon.